Welcome back to Success Stories in English. Today we have a special story, a story about a watch. But not just any watch. It's the story of a poor orphan boy, a boy with no money, no family, no future. And yet he built one of the world's most powerful brands. His name was Hans Wilsdorf, and this is the story of Rolex at B1B2 level. Stay with me. This story will amaze you. Let's go back in time. The year is 1881. The place is a small town in Bavaria, Germany. A baby boy is born. His name is Hans Wilsdorf. Hans grows up in a normal family. His father is a businessman. His mother is a caring woman. Life is simple but good. But then, everything changes. Hans is only 12 years old when both of his parents die. First his mother, then his father. Just like that. Gone. Can you imagine that? You are 12 years old. You are still a child. And suddenly, you are alone in the world. Hans is sent to live with his two sisters. But money is very tight. Life is hard. Hans quickly learns one important lesson. Nobody is going to save you. You have to save yourself. So what does Hans do? He works. He studies. He focuses. At the age of 19, Hans moves to Switzerland. He gets a job at a pearl export company. He is good with numbers. He is good with people. But something is missing. Hans is not passionate about pearls. He is passionate about something much smaller, something most people never think about. He is passionate about watches. Now, here is an important question. In the early 1900s, what did watches look like? They were big. They were heavy. Men carried them in their pockets. They were called pocket watches. And everyone thought this was normal. Everyone thought this was fine. But Hans Wilsdorf had a different idea. He thought, what if people could wear a watch on their wrist? Simple idea, right? But at that time, it was a crazy idea. People laughed at it. Soldiers laughed at it. Businessmen laughed at it. Why? Because wristwatches were seen as women's jewelry. Real men used pocket watches. That was the rule. But Hans did not care about the rules. He cared about one thing: accuracy. You see, the problem with early wristwatches was simple. They were not accurate. The movement inside, the tiny machine that makes the watch tick, was too sensitive. When you moved your arm, the watch lost time. Sometimes 1 minute per day, sometimes more. For Hans, this was unacceptable. He believed that a watch should be more than a beautiful object. It should be a precise tool. So in 1905, at the age of 24, Hans Wilsdorf starts his own company in London with his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis. The company imports Swiss watch movements and puts them into watch cases. He calls the company Wilsdorf and Davis. It is not a glamorous name, but it is a start. Now Hans needs to solve one big problem. How do you make a wristwatch accurate? How do you build something so precise that the world has no choice but to respect it? Before we continue the story, let's talk about the name. Where does Rolex come from? Hans wanted a name that was short, easy to remember, easy to pronounce in any language. He tried many combinations of letters. He sat in the top of a London bus one day, yes, a double-decker bus, and he played with letters in his mind. Then suddenly it came to him. R-O-L-E-X, Rolex. Why did he like it? Because it sounded like a watch ticking. Rolex. Short, strong, sharp. And it looked good on a watch dial. It fit perfectly. In 1908, Hans registers the name Rolex as a trademark, and from that moment, everything changes. The name becomes the mission. The mission becomes the legend. Now back to the big problem: accuracy. Hans needed to prove that his wristwatches were reliable, so he did something smart. He sent his watches to the Kew Observatory in England. The Kew Observatory was the most respected institution for testing timepieces. Only the best watches in the world received a certificate from Kew, and in 1914, Rolex received one. Not just any certificate, a precision certificate. This was the first time a wristwatch, not a pocket watch, ever received this honor. The world noticed. But Hans was not satisfied. He kept pushing. He kept asking, how can we do better? And then came the next big challenge: water. You see, watches and water were enemies. If water got inside a watch, the movement would rust. The watch would stop. It was a serious problem. In the 1920s, Hans starts working on a solution. He wants to create a watch that is completely waterproof. His engineers work for years. They tried different designs, different seals, different crowns, the little button you use to set the time. And then, in 1926, they do it. Rolex introduces the Oyster, the world's first waterproof watch. The case is sealed like an oyster shell. Water cannot get inside. It is a revolution. But Hans knows that a claim means nothing without proof. So he does something brilliant. The year is 1927. A young woman named Mercedes Gleitze decides to swim across the English Channel. The English Channel, the stretch of water between England and France. It is cold. It is deep. It is dangerous. Many people have tried. Many people have failed. Mercedes is brave. She is determined. And Hans Wilsdorf sees an opportunity. He contacts Mercedes. He asks her to wear a Rolex Oyster around her neck during her swim. She agrees. On October 7th, 1927, Mercedes Gleitze enters the water. She swims for over 10 hours. The temperature is freezing. The waves are rough. It is one of the hardest things a human body can do. And when she finally comes out of the water, the Rolex is still working. Perfectly. Hans Wilsdorf buys a full-page advertisement in the Daily Mail newspaper the very next day. He announces the news to the world. A Rolex Oyster kept perfect time after more than 10 hours in the cold waters of the English Channel. The story spreads everywhere. People are amazed. Rolex is no longer just a watch company. It is a symbol of endurance, a symbol of toughness, and something else, something more important. It is a symbol of trust. After the success of the Oyster, things move fast. In 1919, Hans had already moved the company from London to Geneva, Switzerland. Why Geneva? Because Switzerland was, and still is, the center of the watchmaking world. The best craftsmen were there. The best suppliers were there. The best reputation was there. In Geneva, Rolex grows quickly. Hans hires talented engineers and designers. He invests everything back into the company. He does not spend money on luxury for himself. He spends money on research, on quality, on perfection. And in 1931, Rolex creates something that will change the watch industry forever. The perpetual rotor. This is a self-winding mechanism. What does that mean? It means the watch winds itself automatically as you move your wrist. You never need to wind it by hand. The movement of your arm, just living your life, keeps the watch running. It sounds simple, but it was genius. Every automatic watch in the world today uses a similar system. Rolex invented it. Or rather, Hans Wilsdorf's obsession with perfection made it possible. By the 1950s, Rolex was famous, but Hans wanted more. He wanted Rolex to be the watch that humans wore at the edges of the world, on the highest mountains, in the deepest oceans, in the fastest planes. So Rolex started working with explorers and adventurers. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay climbed Mount Everest, the highest mountain on Earth. They wore Rolex watches on their wrists. The watches worked perfectly at the summit, nearly 9,000 meters above sea level, in extreme cold and low oxygen. The same year, Rolex introduced the Submariner, a dive watch, water-resistant to 100 meters. Later versions went much deeper. In 1960, a Rolex watch was attached to the outside of a submarine called the Trieste. That submarine went to the deepest point in the ocean, the Mariana Trench, nearly 11,000 meters deep. The pressure down there is unimaginable. And the Rolex? It survived. Perfectly. Hans Wilsdorf did not just make watches. He sent them on adventures. He tested them in places where failure meant death. And when they came back, still ticking, the world believed. That is the power of proof. Not advertising, not promises. Proof. TheRolex, philosophy. So, what is the secret of Rolex? Why does a watch that costs thousands of dollars still have a waiting list? Why do people save for years just to own one? The answer is not the gold. It is not the diamonds. It is not even the name. The answer is what the name represents. Hans Wilsdorf built Rolex on 3 invisible pillars. The first pillar is precision. Every Rolex watch is tested for days before it leaves the factory. Every single component is checked. The standard is not good enough. The standard is perfect. The second pillar is endurance. Rolex was not built for a shelf. It was built for real life, for the mountain, for the ocean, for the boardroom, for your grandchildren. A Rolex is not a thing you use and throw away. It is a thing you pass down. And the third pillar, the most important one, is trust. When you look at a Rolex on someone's wrist, you do not just see a watch. You see a promise that was made over 100 years ago by a 12-year-old orphan boy who refused to give up. Hans Wilsdorf died in 1960. He never married. He had no children. He left everything, the entire company, to a charitable foundation. He wanted Rolex to continue forever, not for money, for legacy. Think about that. He built one of the most valuable brands in the world, and he gave it away, not to his family, to the future. Let's go over the story one more time. Hans Wilsdorf was born in 1881 in Germany. He lost his parents at 12. He moved to Switzerland at 19. He started a small watch import company in London at 24. He registered the name Rolex in 1908. He proved the waterproof oyster with Mercedes Gleitze swim in 1927. He moved to Geneva and created the self-winding perpetual rotor in 1931. Rolex watches climbed Everest in 1953. They reached the deepest point of the ocean in 1960. And today, over 100 years later, Rolex is still the most recognized watch brand on Earth. One orphan boy, one big idea, 100 years of proof. Now let me ask you something. Hans Wilsdorf had no money. He had no family. He had no connections. He had no safety net. He had nothing. But he had one thing. He had a vision. He could see something that no one else could see. He could see a small, precise, beautiful watch on the wrist of every serious person in the world. And he spent his entire life making that vision real. You are watching this video right now. Maybe you are learning English because you want a better job. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to connect with people from other countries. Maybe you just want to prove something to yourself. Whatever your reason, it is valid. It is enough. Hans did not wait for the perfect moment. He did not wait until he had more money, more support, more confidence. He started with what he had. He started in London with a borrowed idea and a foreign name. And he kept going. Every day, every year, for his entire life. So here's my question for you. What is your Rolex? What is the one thing you are building? Slowly, carefully, with everything you have. What will you leave behind? You do not need to change the world, But you do need to start. And maybe, just maybe, you already have. See you in the next story.